Good evening, viewers. Happy New Year. You're watching ECWA Television Africa, and this is International News Desk. I'm Lois Tureki. Just time for a quick update for what is happening internationally. Our top stories. COVID, million more lockdown as China battles Omicron spread. For the second time in a week, North Korea fires suspected ballistic missile. The United Nations launches nearly $5 billion aid appeal for Afghanistan. Kazakhstan, Russia-led forces to withdraw, new prime minister appointed. Stay with me for the details of this and more other stories. According to reports, 5 million residents in China's central city of Anyang have become home quarantined in a new lockdown to control the spread of the highly transmissible Omicron variant of the coronavirus. China's city of Xi'an, a city of 13 million people, was also placed under lockdown in late December. In a different place, British Prime Minister Boris Johnson is under fresh pressure amidst a new surge in cases after an email was leaked inviting about 100 staff to bring drinks to a party during the country's first lockdown in May 2020. China's aviation regulator has ordered the termination of more than 60 scheduled flights from the United States in recent weeks, after several passengers tested positive for COVID-19 after arriving in China. The Civil Aviation Administration of China, CAAC, has authorized the cancellations of 22 total scheduled U.S. passenger airline flights for Shanghai under its COVID-19 pandemic rules. 10 by Delta Airlines, 6 from United Airlines, and 6 American Airlines. According to Delta, it cancelled Detroit to Shanghai flights last Friday and for January 14th due to the Chinese rule requiring all affected carriers whose passengers test positive for COVID-19 to cancel inbound service on certain China flights. On Tuesday, the CAAC mentioned it would cancel another 2 Delta flights from Detroit to Shanghai and another 6 Delta flights from Seattle to Shanghai from next week, bringing total cancellations to 10 for the airline. On Tuesday morning, Japan and South Korea said North Korea fired what may have been a ballistic missile in less than a week after Pyongyang tested what it said was a hypersonic weapon. In a statement from Seoul's Joint Chiefs of Staff, our military detected a suspected ballistic missile fired by North Korea from land towards the East Sea at around 7:22 a.m. on Monday. The launch, which was also reported by Japan's Coast Guard, he said the North had fired a ballistic missile-like object. The projectile appeared to have landed outside Japan's exclusive economic zone, EEZ, reports say, citing government sources in Tokyo. Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida said, according to reports, that North Korea continues to launch missiles in extremely regrettable. South Korea's National Security Council, which held an emergency meeting, expressed strong regrets over the test, the presidential Blue House said. The latest launch comes after 6 countries, including the United States and Japan, urged nuclear-armed North Korea to end destabilizing actions ahead of a United Nations Security Council closed-door meeting to discuss last week's test. France, Ireland, the United Kingdom, and Albania also signed the statement. Linda Thomas-Greenfield, the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, said in the statement on Monday, these actions increase the risk of inaccuracy and increase also pose a substantial threat to regional stability. North Korea makes these military investments at the expense of the well-being of the North Korean people, she said. Denuclearization talks have been stalled since a flurry of summitry between North Korea leader Kim Jong-un and then the U.S. President Donald Trump collapsed in 2019. Thomas Greenfield reiterated calls for North Korea to return to talks and abandon its missiles and nuclear weapons. North Korea insists dialogues can only recommence when the United States and other countries end what it considers hostile policies. But the military advances have come as the economy has come under growing pressure, not just from sanctions, but strict border closures as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. As the global body launched its largest ever humanitarian appeal for a single country to avert a humanitarian catastrophe, the United Nations has said it needed nearly $5 billion in aid for Afghanistan in 2022. The UN humanitarian agency on Tuesday said $4.4 billion was needed within Afghanistan, while a further $623 million was required to support the millions of Afghans sheltering beyond its borders. Over half the population of about 22 million people face severe hunger, the United Nations said, adding a further 5.7 million displaced Afghans in 5 neighboring countries needed vital relief this year. A full-blown humanitarian catastrophe looms. My message is urgent. Don't shut the door on the people of Afghan, said United Nations Humanitarian Affairs and Emergency Relief Coordinator Matthew Griffiths. Help us scale up and stave off widespread hunger, disease, malnutrition, and ultimately death. Since the Taliban seized control of Afghanistan last August, the country has plunged into financial chaos with inflation and unemployment surging after Washington froze billions of dollars of the country's assets and international financial institutions suspending funds. Moreover, aid supplies have been heavily disrupted due to U.S. sanctions. Afghanistan also suffered its worst drought in decades in 2021. Griffiths said, according to reports, without the aid package, there won't be a future for the Afghanistan people. Still on the news, after a week of deadly unrest in Kazakhstan, Russia-led forces who sent to suppress riots are preparing to withdraw as President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev eyes a new prime minister. Tokayev said on Tuesday that the reliance of troops he requested from the Collective Security Treaty Organization, CSTO, a military alliance of ex-Soviet states which began leaving the distressed Central Asian country in 2 days, with the pullout to take no more than 10 days. Kazakhstan and Russia have outlined last week's crisis as a coup attempt aided by foreign terrorists, but failed to provide concrete evidence to support the claim. The clashes, in which citizens and police were killed, grew out of a peaceful protest against an energy price rise in the west of the oil-rich nation. Kazakhstan Interior Ministry said on Tuesday, Kazakh security forces have detained almost 10,000 people over the unrest. Meanwhile, Tokayev, who earlier sacked the government in an attempt to ease opposition, nominated Alikan Smilvol as prime minister, and the lower house of parliament swiftly voted him for the job. The United Nations prolongs Syria cross-border aid void of Security Council vote. Cross-border humanitarian aid to the northwest Syria has extended de facto for 6 months without a new vote at the United Nations Security Council. The 15-member body had previously issued an authorization for 6 months, allowing aid into rebel-held areas through the use of the Bab al-Hawa crossing at the Turkey-Syria border until January 10, 2022. Bab al-Hawa is the last crossing with a United Nations order allowing aid to be delivered directly to Syrian areas in need without passing through the government channels in Damascus. Over 1,000 trucks carrying food, medicine, and other humanitarian items go through every month. The United Nations Chief Antonio Guterres, in his December report, had stressed the impossibility of replacing, at this stage, the cross-border mechanism for one that crossed front lines from Damascus, which President Bashar al-Assad ally and Permanent Security Council member Russia favor as recognition of the Syrian government's sovereignty over the whole country. Russia had previously raised the possibility of requesting a new Security Council vote on the issue, but did not take that step. The United Nations spokesman Stephanie Dujarric on Monday described the cross-border delivery of aid as essential. According to reports, he said we need aid to have delivered through cross-border and through cross-line. Those are essential elements for us to meet the humanitarian needs of all Syrians. Aid through the Bab al-Hawa crossing primarily serves the roughly 3 million people living in the Idlib region, which remains outside the government's control. Humanitarian advocates have warned millions of people will face catastrophic consequences if the aid operation is shut down. But in a rare show of unity, the Security Council unanimously adopted a last-minute compromise resolution on July 9, 2021, allowing the extension of the cross-border operation. Resolution 2585 permits the United Nations use of the Bab al-Hawa crossing from the delivery of humanitarian assistance into Syria for 6 months with an automatic extension of an additional 6 months. 4 humanitarian border crossings into war-torn Syria were set up by the Security Council in July 2014, but in subsequent renewals of that mandate, the number was reduced by Russia and China, who used their veto powers to discontinue 3 crossings. Going now, according to Mali's leader, urges ECOWAS to review inhumane sanctions. According to Mali's military ruler, Assimi Goïta, Bamako is open to negotiation after the 15-member West African Economic Bloc, ECOWAS, imposed additional sanctions on the distressed Sahel country over overdue elections. Military Commander Goïta seized power last May, the second time within a year, attracting sanctions from the economic community of West African state ECOWAS. Goïta said, according to reports on Monday, even if we regret the illegitimate, illegal and inhumane nature of certain decisions, Mali remains open to dialogue with the economic community of West African states to find a consensus. There is concern about the consequences of these measures, but I reassure you all that we are taking actions to face this challenge. Mali's military government has declared the recall of its ambassadors in ECOWAS states and the closure of its borders in response to the latest sanctions. It has promised to take all necessary measures to retaliate against the measures, which it says will affect populations already severely affected by the security crisis and health crisis. On Sunday, leaders from the West African bloc decided to close borders with the Sahel state and enforce a trade embargo following a proposal by the army-dominated government last month to stay in power for up to 5 years before staging elections. U.S. Ambassador Richard Mills urged Bamako to return to democracy in timely fashion, but stopped short of taking a stand on the ECOWAS sanctions, which is reviewing. The bloc's decision was supported by France, Mali's former colonial power, at a United Nations Security Council meeting on West Africa on Monday. The French ambassador to the United Nations, Nicolas de Rivère, voiced his country's full support for ECOWAS efforts. According to reports from journalists trying to enter Mali, airlines from France and the Ivory Coast have cancelled flights to Mali. Air traffic from Senegal was also interrupted. Guinean authorities were at the same military government seized power last year and was also targeted by ECOWAS sanction, announced they will keep their borders open, providing landlocked Mali with continued access to a seaport. Still in Africa, the United Nations dialogues with Sudan's rival factions. On Monday, the United Nations started meetings with Sudanese groups to find a way out of the political deadlock that has crippled the country since an October military coup. The United Nations envoy for Sudan, Volker Perthes, told a news conference in the capital, Khartoum, that consultations will first aim to build confidence between the military and the pro-democracy movement before they possibly engage in direct dialogues. He said that the time has come to end violence and to enter a comprehensive consultative process to solve the crisis. The chaos in Sudan has deepened with the resignation of embattled Prime Minister Abdallah Hamdok last week, following the failure to reach a concession between the military and the pro-democracy movement. Parties said the consultations that began on Monday could eventually result in a consensus that will help find a compromise to ease the grinding stalemate. He added that the United Nations was meeting with a civil society group on Monday and will continue engaging with other players in the coming days. I can say that the military didn't oppose our initiative, and that is important, he added. According to him, some protest groups have rejected the United Nations offer for discussions and put the removal of the military from power as a condition to engage in negotiations. Parties was referring mainly to the Sudanese Professionals Association, which led the uprising against al-Bashir. The SPA announced its rejection of talks on Sunday, saying the only way out of the ongoing crisis is through the removal of the generals from power. In a statement, the ruling Sovereign Council welcomed the United Nations initiative to facilitate talks among Sudanese players and called on the African Union to support and contribute to the efforts. And of interest, the U.S. man recovering after breakthrough pig heart transplant. A man with fatal heart disease is responding well 3 days after being given a genetically modified pig heart in a first-of-its-kind surgery, patients' doctors reported on Monday. The surgery, performed by a team at the University of Maryland Medicine in the United States, is among the first to demonstrate the feasibility of a pig-to-human heart transplant, a field made possible by new gene editing tools. If proven successful, scientists hope pig organs could help alleviate shortages of donor organs. This was a breakthrough surgery and brings us one step closer to solving the organ shortage crisis. There are simply not enough donor human hearts available to meet the long list of potential recipients, Dr. Bartley Griffith, who surgically transplanted the pig heart into the patient, said in a statement. We are proceeding cautiously, but we are also optimistic that this first-in-the-world surgery will provide an important new option for patients in the future, Griffith added. About 110,000 Americans are currently waiting for an organ transplant, and more than 6,000 patients die each year before getting one, according to reports. Bennett's genetically modified pig heart was provided by Revivico, a regenerative medicine company based in Virginia. On the morning of the surgery, the transplant team removed the pig's heart and placed it into a special device to preserve its function until the surgery. In addition to the genetic changes to the pig heart, Bennett received an experimental anti-rejection drug. In our local news in Nigeria, our 2023 presidential elections. With regards to the 2023 general elections, a lot of political aspirants have declared their interest to run for presidential elections, including the All Progressive Congress APC national leader and former Lagos State Governor Asiwaju Bola Tinubu. According to him, he has told President Muhammadu Buhari of his intention to compete for the presidential ticket of the ruling All Progressive Congress APC. He said as a Democrat, President Buhari did not stop him from attempting to pursue his lifelong ambition. According to him, with what he did in Lagos as governor, he has the capacity to rule Nigeria. On Osibajo's potential ambition, Tinubu maintained that he will not discuss any individual. Other aspirants are Kwankwaso, Dolo, Momodu, amongst others. And on sports news, Egypt take on Nigeria in AFCON Group D opener. Egypt and Nigeria face off in their African Cup of Nations Group D opener in Cameroon today, Tuesday. The match ongoing at the State Rome D Agia in Garau is one of the most highly anticipated of the tournament's group stage fixtures. Egypt have won the tournament a record 7 times, while Nigeria lifted the trophy on 3 occasions, most recently in 2019. This is all the news, but a quick reminder of our major stories. On COVID, millions more lockdown as China battles Omicron spread. For the second time in a week, North Korea fires suspected ballistic missile. The United Nations launches nearly $5 billion aid appeal for Afghanistan. And Kazakhstan, Russia-led forces to withdraw new Prime Minister appointed. Many thanks for watching. Don't forget to follow us on all our social media platforms at Equa Television. From all of us at Equa Television, have a blessed night.